Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time here in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, FifthDimensionRadio.com. I'm Seth, and that means it's time for 10 Cent Beer Night, the official sports show of Fifth Dimension Radio. So, hey, just Seth today because we're filming here. This is for January 21st, but we're filming here on January 19th. Martin Luther King Day, happy MLK Day to you. And it's just me because I think if you didn't tune in last week, Bob had announced that he's coaching the bowling team for the Barberton Magics, and they have a special MLK tournament today. So he will not be joining me here for the show. So it's just me. You're going to have to deal with me right now. And not in a bad mood whatsoever, but it is brutally cold. I do not like the cold, and it's going to be brutally cold all week. This is stay inside and watch basketball type weather here. So we're talking 16, 18 degree highs, 2 degree lows. Already talks about canceling school here in Ohio for Tuesday because of a 0 degree day tomorrow. So it's just not a ton, some snow, but not a ton. But it's so cold you don't want to deal with it. But we'll see what happens. So that being said, if school gets canceled tomorrow, we are by the time you hear this, it'll be too late anyway. But just for future notice, if schools get canceled on days of games, that will jeopardize if there will be a game broadcast, and I mean the high school basketball scheduled game broadcast. So if we ever run into that, that's what happens. So if you're going to tune in, but schools got canceled, bad weather, that's what happened. That's why there'd be no game. But by the time you hear the Streetsboro at Norton will be wrapped up here for our basketball broadcast. If it does happen, I don't know. I'm talking about the future here. You're listening to me talking about the past. And I'm talking about like not knowing what's going on Tuesday, and you already know what's going on Tuesday. So it's a little confusing there. But moving ahead to next week's game, this is a big one. This is one I had circled when the basketball schedule came out because I knew this was going to be a fight. We will have on January 27th, Tuesday, here for the high school basketball broadcast of FifthDimensionRadio.com. Field Falcons at Mogadore Wildcats. And for those that do not know, this is a bitter rivalry here. These schools are 12, 15 minutes away from each other, drive time. They used to be, I don't know if they're in the same conference still anymore. They were for a while, which fueled the rivalry. Then Mogadore had to drop a conference due to lower amount of students. But they still occasionally played field. But these two do need to play each other because this is like Browns and Bengals type thing, or Guardians and Reds. It's like same area, in that case, same state. But it is a bitter rivalry, and they love to just get in each other's face and battle it out. So I mean, that one's gonna be a good game. I knew when I saw the schedule come in, that was one I said that game for sure will be good. So there you go. So January 27th will be the next high school broadcast for Fifth Dimension Radio there. So enough about high school basketball. Like I said, happy Martin Luther King Day. While I am broadcasting here, it is 1:31 p.m. and most of the NBA is playing today in honor of Martin Luther King Day. It's just something they started out years ago. Basketball likes to play on Christmas. So does NFL. NFL likes to play on Thanksgiving. But basketball, especially with the impact it has on the black community, loves to honor the tradition of Martin Luther King Day. They take advantage of it, let's be honest here. And have the majority of the league play, and then most of the games are nationally televised. As I'm speaking right now, Bucks and Hawks are underway already. Cavaliers and Thunder will be in an hour here. So while I'm wrapping up this show, they'll be starting here. So that's what's going on. We'll get to the Cavaliers here in a little bit. I do want to start things off with football, the first segment. With a few things with 4 teams left, and then of course the coaching carousel. Since our last 10-cent beer night, 2 more vacancies have opened up and 2 vacancies have been filled, okay, which leaves 10 new head coaching spots in the NFL. That is tied for the most since 2002, I believe, and this is the third or fourth time in NFL history this has happened where we've seen 10 new coaches. And like I said, 2 vacancies have opened. We'll start with the first one. Since our last 10-cent beer night, the Pittsburgh Steelers were eliminated by the Houston Texans, which, I was very happy to hear about. Nick Chubb is 2-0 in Pittsburgh in the playoffs. There you go. But unfortunately for Nick Chubb and the Texans, they were defeated this past weekend by the New England Patriots, which me and Bob both predicted. But that being said, the day after the game, Mike Tomlin, after 19 years of winning Steelers football, resigned. It just keeps getting worse and worse. And when I mean worse, I mean, I hate the team. I really do. Mike Tomlin's a brilliant coach, and he's a Hall of Fame coach. That's the honest truth. If I'm going to be an honest sports analyst here, and especially in Northeast Ohio, which is one of the football capitals of the world, I am going to sit here and tell you Mike Tomlin will be in Canton, Ohio one day. Okay? 19 years, no losing seasons. Didn't always make. I think he made the playoffs at least 17 of the 19 years. There was a couple of the years he did not. 16 or 7. I don't have it in front of me right now. I can look it up here in a sec, actually. But the issue is the team kept finding a way to make the playoffs the past few years. But, they haven't won a playoff game since 2017. Okay, yeah, it's been about 9 years since they've won a playoff game there. But they kept regularly making the playoffs and just could not figure out a way how to take that next step. And then with the roster getting older, and in his defense, front office is weird. It's a new GM. He's going to his third off season, I believe. So, they're still trying to find if what they have with him is any good, and just does it fit the Steelers format, And right now, again, they've been competitive here. I got it up here right now. Playoffs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 13 out of the 19 years he made the playoffs. There. And he did win the Super Bowl in 2008, his second season at 36 years old. So from age 35 to 50, which I'm 35 right now, so from my age now to 53 years old, he was in Pittsburgh. So, he had an impressive time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. As much as I don't like it, yeah, he just felt it was best for both sides if he moved on. So they're looking for their first head coach in 19 years there. The other vacancy happened this morning about 9:30 a.m. The Buffalo Bills have fired Sean McDermott after his overtime loss to the Denver Broncos this past weekend. And I told people if they didn't make at least the AFC Championship, I would even Super Bowl, he was definitely so safe, but AFC Championship, I think he would have been back next year. This Bills team has been highly competitive, top 5 team for the past 7 years or so. The Kansas City Chiefs were not in the playoffs to eliminate them that's been the story most of the Bills' time this past decade. And I had the Broncos winning, and so did Bob actually. I went 3-1 this past week, and Bob went. Did he go? I think Bob picked the Bears over the Rams, so I think we both went 3-1 in the playoffs this past weekend here in our picks. But it was one of those things where they felt like it was like, this is a weird example, but this is like when the Cleveland Indians moved away from Mike Hargrove. The record was good, the playoff record was good. He went to 2 World Series, but at one point you go, you know what? I think they've seen the best out of him. They're not getting over the hump. We are making better roster moves. let's see if Charlie Manuel can do any better. And that was for the Indians at the time. But for the Bills, they're going to see if anybody else can do any better. In my opinion, here's the thing: is McDermott is a winner. He was there for 9 years. 8 of those 9 years, he went to the playoffs. His second year was the only year he didn't. He went 6-10. Okay, the past 7 years he's won at least 10 games. The guy's like 98-66 or something like that. I mean, so he's a great. So with him now on the free agent market for coaches, he is going to get looks, and I do expect Cleveland to talk to him. And in a sec here, I'll tell you the latest on Cleveland, their search. But as far as Buffalo goes, this year was one of the least impressive. I mean, they were a good team. Don't get me wrong. They were a good team, okay? There's an argument to be made they were a great team. But I think the issue was, too, their defense was good, like a B-rated defense, and he always had an A-plus defense. He was always in the top 3 defensive conversation. And the thing is, they brought a couple good names in, like Joey Bosa, former Ohio State Buckeye. But some of their guys that are past their prime. Some of them moved on from the team. Some of them did get older. I know Von Miller was there for a minute, and he moved on from them too. And I mean that's a absolute beast of a defensive player. I know he's not what he used to be, but I mean he's always been a reliable, great top tier linebacker. I mean when you talk about he'll be in Canton as well as I was talking about Mike Tomlin, Von Miller that is. And so what I'm saying is he went in this playoffs with one of it was like I said, good but not great defense. If it was his defense he had the prior 4 years, this team goes to the Super Bowl. They beat the Denver Broncos. And I'm not saying the Broncos got lucky or anything. The Broncos played very well. They earned it. It came with a price. Bo Nix's broken ankle. But I do think this was for the Buffalo fan base, and I have nothing against the Buffalo Bills whatsoever, but this was just an unlucky year. It was like your team was good, and had it been the team of the past few years, it would have even been a better outcome. You could have been even talking about holding up the Lombardi Trophy. But because it happened to be a season with a little bit of digression in parts of the roster, you're not, and your coach has been relieved of his duties. So what will happen there in Buffalo and whatnot. I do think I'll give you predictions of everybody else right now from what I'm hearing as far as coaches go. I will start with the Bills just because of the recent firing. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator, I am pretty sure is going to get promoted. It is somebody the Browns want to interview to potentially this week as they're going with 6 candidates with second rounds of interviews. And there's a couple they want to give a first interview for, and one of them is Joe Brady. Josh Allen loves Joe Brady. He says he better never go anywhere. Okay? And Josh Allen is locked down in a Buffalo contract for a while. Okay? So that is telling me that Joe Brady probably, I would say right now, 80% chance he gets promoted. Unless they have different ideas, you know. But I do think they're going to go within because, I mean, there are good coaches there. I've even heard one rumor about will they talk to Brian Daboll again. He was the offensive coordinator for most of the time Josh Allen and McDermott were here. And not here, but in Buffalo. And, you know, Daboll then was hired to be the Giants head coach and then later fired in mid-season this past season. Will he return and take on the head coach duties there? So that's an idea, but I really think Joe Brady's going to be the guy. I want to share a story with you before we do the breakdown, and we might do a lot more of the coaching talk in the next segment. Just do it real quick before we get into basketball. I read a story right before we got on air. Producer Bob was telling me about some of the stuff he was working on the side. I did not know this story. Here's an interesting story. Back when we're going back to the worst Browns era in the history of the Cleveland Browns, Browns had just moved on from Mike Pettin, who just literally retired last week. Okay, Mike Pettin, former head coach of the Browns, retired. He was a he was head coach, assistant, and defensive specialist for the Vikings the past couple years, and now he's no longer in the NFL. Browns had just moved on from Mike Pettin. They were interviewing candidates, and it came down to their final candidate choices. So the front office voted. This is Sashi Brown, if you remember him. He's now in the Ravens front office. And Vice President of Operations, Andrew Berry, who is now President of Operations and GM for the Cleveland Browns now. And a 4-1 vote, get this, the Cleveland Browns front office wanted to hire defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers under Ron Rivera, Sean McDermott. They wanted to offer him the job of the Cleveland Browns before the Bills offered him the job. Okay? Jimmy Haslam overruled the vote and said, I want Hugh Jackson. And you know the famous story, Hugh Jackson in 2 seasons goes 1-31, about 36 I think it was total, before he was fired mid-season in his third year. But Sean McDermott, and I understand people say, well, he went out and won as much in Cleveland here. Probably true, but I don't think we go 1-31 with Sean McDermott. No. I don't think so. And I understand that things were a mess. That Browns roster was going through a complete overhaul at the time. But to read that the front office saw what the Bills saw and wanted to take advantage of it before Buffalo did, and Jimmy Haslam overruled it, just shows more that Jimmy Haslam has no idea what he's talking about. I'm hoping Andrew Berry is ahead of this whole head coach thing, and he makes the call. Now, people will ask about the Stefanski hiring back in 2020. Paul DePodesta made that call. That was the difference there. Because once Haslam, well, for Chudzinski was Banner's call. Once Haslam picked, I just said his name. Drawing a blank here for the Browns there. But once he went through his third coach that failed, Mike Pettin. Yeah, I forgot Mike Pettin. Pettin, Jackson, and then Freddie Kitchens. Actually, Kitchens was Dorsey's pick, but once Pettin and Jackson did not work out, then it sounds like Haslam really stepped back. I hope he continues to step back from the head coaching list because they do have a good. I think they have a good head coaching list as potential candidates coming up, but I hope Barry has final say because we cannot afford another Haslam pick here. But to hear we could have had Sean McDermott how many years ago, and he probably would have been fired by now, let's be honest. But the guy's a winner, and I think they should look at him. I got to take a break. When we come back, we'll finish up this head coach talk, and then we'll talk about the Cavs, the Buckeyes, and the Zips on the hardwood. Welcome back to our second segment, 10 Cent Beer Night here on FifthDimensionRadio.com. I'm Seth, and I'll try to get more through this football stuff. I got talking. I thought I was actually going to finish that in one segment. That's not going to happen, especially with all the information that we have right now. So we'll keep on with the football. I told you before I went on break about since our last 10 Cent Beer Night, 2 vacancies open and 2 vacancies filled. I mentioned the ones that were open now with the Steelers and the Bills. Filled. The 2 vacancies filled. The first team to hire a head coach this past week was the New York Giants. They have hired former Ravens head coach and Super Bowl winning head coach John Harbaugh. He had phone call interviews with a couple more teams, including the Browns, about just interest, just general conversation. And before he could go, he went and had an in-person interview with the Giants, and it went so well that they kept him down there. Okay. And now some people are wondering, well, if he would have known the Bills' vacancy was going to be open, would he have changed his mind? I don't think so, and here's the reason why. I think the way the Giants are built is more his style, and the roster he has is something he could use, especially like I know he's technically a special teams coach, but he does heavily invest um, a lot of his knowledge, not in the defensive side of things. He likes a strong defensive unit. Well, who doesn't? But it's if you talk about, I mean, some coaches are like offensive heavy, some are defensive. Again, because he came from special teams, he's got kind of a mix. So it's similar to former Ravens coach Brian Billick was the same way. He had a good knowledge of both sides of the ball, offense and defense, but he really, really emphasized the defensive side a little more. I think the Giants offer him a lot there, and especially with some of their high draft picks they have going into this next draft, and the loaded on the defensive front of things, and offensive line for this class. I mean, this class. I mean, defense, offensive line, wide receiver is just grade A. I think this is an opportunity he wanted to take advantage of, something he could grow right away. I think Jackson Dart fits his system too. And here's the other thing: I think the NFL wants another Harbaugh Bowl. And if you don't remember the Harbaugh Bowl, that was back in the late 2000s there, 2008, I think it was. I'm going by memory here, so forgive me. 2008 or 9 was when the Ravens played the 49ers, Colin Kaepernick versus Joe Flacco. And it was Jim Harbaugh was the coach of the Niners, and John Harbaugh was the coach of the Ravens. And the Ravens and John Harbaugh won that one. And, I don't like talking about it because I hate that team, but it is what it is, and John Harbaugh's a great coach. So now years past, now I mean fast forwarding to this year, I mean not years past, but fast forwarding, Jim Harbaugh is now with the Los Angeles Chargers. So he's with an AFC team now. And Baltimore was in the AFC. So if there was another Harbaugh Bowl, it was going to be in the AFC Championship. Now John is in the NFC now with the Giants. So I think I do think within 3 or 4 years, call me a conspiracy theorist or whatnot, I think you're going to see a Chargers-Giants Super Bowl because the NFL does want to see it. They want to see another Harbaugh Bowl, But I was really hoping he would at least talk to the Browns. I know to get John, there had been a lot of money on the table. He wanted his own staff, and he wanted his own front office. Well, the Giants have their own GM, but maybe other people in the front office John will have say in. I don't know, but there you go. The second vacancy filled was the Atlanta Falcons, and I kind of called this one. I told friends I had Kevin Stefanski going to the Giants. If the Giants did not get him, Falcons were going to be my second pick. All right, Giants get Harbaugh. Falcons sealed the deal with Kevin Stefanski during what game was it? Was it Bills? No, it was the one after. During the 49ers and Seahawks game, it became official. Kevin Stefanski agreed to a 5-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons there. And so this is going to be interesting because I think this is a good roster. It's similar in a weird way. It's similar to the one he had when he started with Cleveland. When he came to Cleveland, the first back in 2020, he had Baker Mayfield first overall pick under center. He had great weapons with Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham Jr., David Njoku, Austin Hooper then at the time, Jarvis Landry, and he had an offensive line that was just about to become one of the better offensive line in the game, okay? On the defensive side of the ball, it needed a little bit of work, but you did have Myles Garrett, you did have Denzel Ward. You had a couple key pieces all around that were just solid, good players. And so going into this Atlanta Falcons team, similar but different on the defensive side of the ball. You don't got Myles Garrett or Denzel Ward, but you have other great pieces. They have spent a lot of their high draft picks the past couple years on the defensive side of the ball, and they got some good defensive playmakers there. Jeff Ulrich, the defensive coordinator under Morris, is going to stay in Atlanta with Stefanski and coach the defense. So that was a plus for Atlanta fans there. On the offensive side of the ball, this is where it gets weird, okay? Decent O-line, all right. At quarterback, it's probably going to be Kirk Cousins. Yes, Michael Penix is there, but I think with the change at coaching and how Stefanski, likes to do things his way, as we've seen, I think they could potentially move Penix, especially with, they gave Cousins all that money. Cousins started really producing at the second half of the season. He's worked with Stefanski before in Minnesota. It's just, I think, on top of that, ownership was not happy when the GM picked Penix in the first round after signing Cousins to that deal, and Penix really did not hold down his starter spot. So it's either Cousins starts and they let Penix sit and hold a clipboard for a little bit, which might not be a bad idea, or they move on from Penix. But either way, he's got a quarterback to work with. He does have Bijan Robinson, who's one of the better running backs in the game. Question is, will he use him correctly? He didn't always use Nick Chubb in his prime correctly. I stand by what I said. The second half of 2021 is a prime example. Baker Mayfield's shoulders hurt, and he just decided not to run the ball consistently. When you had a healthy Chubb, a healthy Kareem Hunt, and a healthy his name is slipping my mind, but it was a third string running back at the time. Dearness Johnson, that's his name. You had enough to help Baker Mayfield out after with an injured shoulder. You know, he'd have to throw the ball as much, but you decided to keep testing that arm. That was a little weird to me. He does. I think Drake London's looks will go up. Kyle Pitts is a free agent. Will they bring him back? But either way, I think this is a good fit for Atlanta here. So the other vacancies right now, other than Cleveland, Tennessee Titans. Something interesting has happened recently. The Kansas City Chiefs asked the Bears to interview the running back coach Eric Bieniemy, who was with the Kansas City Chiefs from 2019 to 2022 as their offensive coordinator, so they're asking to bring him back. Now, wait a minute. Matt Nagy was their offensive coordinator. He's under, his contract did expire. Why aren't they bringing him back? Word is, Chiefs know for a fact he's getting another job somewhere else. Okay? So they said it's a done deal pretty much. He's getting a better position elsewhere. And he's a finalist for the Titans job. Interesting. Is Matt Nagy going to be the next head coach for the Tennessee Titans? We'll see here. But Baltimore Ravens, they interviewed Schwartz twice. They're looking at other candidates. Pittsburgh Steelers, they interviewed Flores, Brian Flores is who I think they're going to pick. But now you have Sean McDermott. But if Sean McDermott comes in, he's going to want the 4-3 defense. And I don't want Sean McDermott in Pittsburgh. That will upset me because I think he'll do very well. So there you go with those three there. The Miami Dolphins, it's up in the air what direction they'll go. They went with high offense last time. They went offensive mind last time, I should say. Rumor has it they're going to prefer a defensive-minded guy. Okay. You have... Let me see. I'm missing somebody here. Let's see. I said Pittsburgh. Let's see. Titans have fixed. I mean, yeah, you have the Bills. Okay, I brought up them with Joe Brady. Anyway, I'll pull that because I can't believe I'm drawing blanks here. For the Browns, who have been interviewed, second interviews coming up. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz will get a second interview. Offensive coordinator for the Ravens, potentially offensive coordinator for the Giants, Todd Monken will get a second interview. That I find interesting. Monken was the offensive coordinator for Freddie Kitchens, but didn't get to call plays. He did call plays in Baltimore. This is the guy. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to go back to him because I think he's going to win it. Passing game coordinator Nate Scheelhaase of the Rams will get a second interview. It's been pushed back to January 26th due to the Rams advancing the NFC title game. Mike McDaniel, former Dolphins head coach, will get a second interview. Okay. Reported interested. They are interested in Jeff Havley of the defense coordinator of the Green Bay Packers. He might get an interview. Chris Shula, defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams, might get an interview. Again, can't do it right now till January 26th, and even further if they make the Super Bowl. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills. I think he gets promoted and takes the Bills job. Other guys, second interview for Jesse Minter, defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay. This is the guy. This is my prediction pick. This is the guy I think is going to come to Cleveland and be the new head coach. Second interview scheduled, offensive coordinator Grant Udinski, Jacksonville Jaguars. Here is why. Okay, I was doing some research because I heard a lot of great stuff about him before he was even scheduled for the first interview. And they said, this is the dark, these analysts were saying, multiple of them, this is a dark horse for the Cleveland Browns job. This is a guy that fits what they're looking for. This is, and they're talking high. Now, Jacksonville took a big leap this year, okay? However, Udinski never called plays, but he did work with the offense. So I did some research on him, and I did research on Scheelhaase, too, because this guy's name is all over. The Steelers even interviewed it. I think the Ravens did, too. Everybody's about this Scheelhaase guy in Los Angeles, but to start with Udinski, where he came from, he started as a graduate coaching assistant at Baylor. He played for Baylor, okay? And so Matt Rule took him with him, where this was Matt Rule era, when Matt Rule went and took over the Carolina Panthers, and Udinski went with him. Matt Rule gets fired, okay? And then the intern comes in, and then at the end of the season, everybody's released of their position there in Carolina. Kevin O'Connell was tipped off. This is the Vikings head coach. He was looking for a new assistant tight ends coach. And he was tipped off, hey, you got to check out this Udinski guy. Very knowledgeable. He might be what you're looking for. They bring him in. Lights out interview. He's hired. During practices and spring training the next year, that was 2023, they were blown away by his football IQ. They said he was off the charts. This guy was just brilliant. He just knew his stuff. So the next year, they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to promote you to quarterback coach and assistant offensive coordinator. Okay? He's the one, he was supposed to mentor, I'm forgetting names today. I'm so bad. Well, first of all, he's credited at helping Sam Darnold get his game back on track. Now you see Sam Darnold in the NFC Championship with Seattle, okay? He's credited just setting him the right tone, the right path. Mind you, he knew Sam Darnold when he was in Carolina. So there was a relationship already there. McCarthy, the quarterback, for Minnesota. That's who he was supposed to mentor and help develop. All right, but then McCarthy goes down with injury. Darnold has a great year for 1 year in Minnesota. Udinski gets offered offensive coordinator in Jacksonville with Cohen as the new head coach. Okay, he doesn't call plays, but he did a great job with the offense. He's 30 years old. He's the same age as Myles Garrett. They think there might be something there. Again, he also didn't call plays, so if he comes in, is he going to want to call offensive plays, or is he going to let somebody else do it, and he's just going to coach like he's been doing? Because that would be great if we could get a head coach that didn't always have to call plays, but sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, okay? I have a gut feeling, because of his age, how young he is, and how much he knows, especially at the quarterback position, this is the guy they're going to get. It's just I don't sports gamble. I almost want to put money on it. This is who. Now that Scheelhaase guy, I want to talk about him briefly because he got a second interview scheduled pretty fast too. Passing game coordinator. Okay, not offense coordinator, not defense coordinator. Passing game coordinator. Where'd he come from? He came from Iowa State. The coach that's now with Penn State. He was there. He was offensive coordinator there, I believe. And here, Matt Campbell, who was with Iowa State, he was the running backs coach, and then he moved up to an offensive position. I don't remember if it was coordinator or not, or maybe offensive coordinator assistant or something. And then McVay called him and offered him passing coordinator duties. And Campbell said, yeah, you can't pass that up. So he went and took that job. But a lot of people are talking about him, not just Cleveland. This isn't just a random interview. Hey, let's see if there's anything there. A lot of people like him. Came out of the woodwork there. I do think if you would give me a top three of who the Browns are looking at, I'm going to say Udinski, Scheelhaase, and then Jim Schwartz. I do think Schwartz is going to end up being in the top 3. I think he'll be here regardless there. Um, there you go. Eastern Conference All-Stars just announced for the NBA. This just happened. Jalen Brunson, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Tyrese Maxey, Cade Cunningham, and Jaylen Brown. For the first time in 3 years, Donovan Mitchell is not a starter. I think he earned it. I think it's maybe because of the Cavs record or whatnot. Real quick, I only got a couple minutes left. Who's going to the Super Bowl? Okay. 3 p.m. CBS on Sunday. New England Patriots at the Denver Broncos. By the way, these are the Mike versus Sean Bowls. No joke. Mike Vrabel of the New England Patriots versus Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos. And then Mike McDonald of the Seattle Seahawks versus Sean McVay of the Los Angeles Rams. So there you go. Okay. Eastern Conference. Oh, never mind. I'll give you more updates on the All-Star game when it comes in. Real quick, New England is 5.5-point favorites. I think New England's going to win this one. Give me New England by 10. I think Stidham, because again, Bo Nix broke his ankle. I think he does a little bit better than people think, but it's not going to be good enough. New England Patriots find their way back to the Super Bowl. Can you believe it? I'm happy for Mike Vrabel, Akronite kid. 6:30 p.m. on Fox, Los Angeles Rams at Seattle Seahawks. Seattle 2.5-point favorites right now. I am taking Seattle. How well this team has played this year and in the playoffs. Kenneth Walker having the best game we've seen a Seattle running back have since Marshawn Lynch. The defense playing so good. This is why they brought Mike McDonald in, by the way. I think we will see a rematch of, 2013, 2004, I think it was 2015, Seattle and New England. Remember, hand the ball off, run the ball. Marshawn Lynch ran the drive, and when it was time to take one more run to take the lead in the Super Bowl, Wilson threw the interception in the end zone. They should have ran the ball. Even Carroll will tell you to this day they should have ran the ball. I think it's going to be a rematch here. I got to take a break. When we come back, we'll finally talk basketball, and then we'll be Hot Stove. And welcome back to our last segment of 10 Cent Beer Night here on FitDimensionRadio.com. I'm Seth, and thank you guys for tuning in. Seriously, I was mentioning NFL head coach candidates that still are looking for a coach, along with the Browns, Steelers, Bills, and Ravens. There you have the Miami Dolphins down there. You got the Arizona Cardinals. That would be a good place, I think, for Mike Tomlin. I think that's a good fit. It's away from the AFC. It doesn't hurt his Steelers reputation. And it'd be funny because he beat the Cardinals the one Super Bowl he won. Las Vegas Raiders. They'll be looking for a coach. I did see Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinator of the 49ers, get an interview there. Rumor has it he's favored to win there. That position. And then Tennessee Titans, of course. Titans, like I said, they might be hiring Matt Nagy. We'll see. He was a top 3 finalist for the job there. So that's some of the head coaching candidates to look out for. Cavaliers just tipped off here. I mentioned the Eastern Conference NBA All-Star starters. Here's the Western Conference for you. Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Stephen Curry, Nikolai Jokic, and Victor Wembanyama. So a big group there, physically big, along with Steph there on the in the middle of all that. But yeah, OKC and Cleveland just tipped off in Cleveland. Cleveland last week 2-1. Okay, they lost to the Jazz 112-123. I was at that game, and it was weird because here's the thing: is the Jazz are going the right direction. They got some good pieces. They're 1 year away. I would say, this year I would keep the same coach. They move the ball very well. I think this is a team that just misses the playoffs, gets hopefully a good pick in the lottery, for their sake, hopefully. And then they can just, because next year's draft is supposed to be loaded. This year, I should say, excuse me. But Jazz just outplayed the Cavs there. Cavs' problem was the ball just wasn't going in. They were taking bad shots. Defense wasn't terrible that day. But they were just, there was just, I talked about last week, the the formula that's working for the Cavs. Start the game trying to go inside, get the easy shots, the better shots, get into good rhythm, and then the second half have Donovan Mitchell go off and then start shooting more threes once you get your confident shooting stroke going. That tends to be, and I'm as a team, obviously not just Donovan Mitchell shooting threes, but that tends to be the formula that's been working for the Cavs. And it was again against the Jazz, miss shot, just, and then just getting out of rhythm, taking some bad shots. Again, plenty of steals and good rebounding. Overall from the Cavs that game, but they just couldn't pull it off. They swept the 76ers last week on both ESPN games. The first one was 133-107. Man, just beat them up. The second one, 117-115 with 4 seconds left. Jalen Tyson drived it in. He got double teamed. He dished it underneath to Mobley, who slammed it in. And then there was 4.1 seconds left there. Sixers didn't have a timeout, so they did have to toss it up. They missed. Cavaliers won there. Jalen Tyson with 39 points. They said people at the game were asking, who's this Jalen Tyson guy? Now you know. Speaking of let him know, this was funny. Last night it was announced rapper T.I. is putting out his first single in like 6 years, and it's called Let Him Know. So he hashtagged Let Him Know. No, so anybody that knows the Cavs, that's their slogan, is let them know. So it comes up, let them know, and then the Cavaliers logo. Donovan Mitchell saw that on Twitter, and he called him out on it. He's like, let them know, with like laughing emojis and whatnot. And with a gif of like a kid going like, hey! Because that's the Cavs slogan. This guy's pushing the song Let Him Know, but again, if you hashtag it, it comes up as a signature hashtag for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I thought it was funny there. So this week, I'm saying the Thunder and the Cavs just tipped off as I'm recording this episode here. Wednesday on ESPN, so while you're listening to this game is going on, 7 p.m. at the Hornets. Cavs will be Cavs at Hornets, and the Cavs have lost to the Hornets already this year because I was at that game, and that was tough. Yeah, they're 0-1, I think, versus the Hornets. They're 0-1. So, got to figure out a way to beat the Hornets. This is for the first time this season. And again, Hornets, they got some good pieces. They're a decent team there. Friday, they're back home, and they're playing the Sacramento Kings, 7:30 p.m. on FanDuel, Ohio. Saturday, they head down to Orlando. So they play at home Friday, then they fly down to Orlando to play the Magic, 7 p.m. on FanDuel. And then Monday, January 26th, they come back home to play the Magic. So they're back-to-back games against the Magic, and that's on Peacock, is the Monday, January 26th game. So these next 5 games, I say if you can go at least 3-2, that's a win with itself. The Thunder game's going to be the hardest one today. I think they should beat the Hornets. I would imagine to beat the Kings and take one out of the Magic. If they go better than 3-2, I would love that, but just being trying to be realistic here. If you can at least give me that, I'll take that. That'll be much appreciated for the fans and keep them in a good position there in the East, as they're in 5th place now after going 2-1 last week. So so they're still in the mid. Like, even if they have just a good week, they move up the ladder already in the Eastern Conference. So they're not far behind at all as far as seeding and playoffs this early in the season here. Ohio State's men's basketball, switching to that. Last week against UCLA last Saturday, 86-74, they won. Mobley Jr. with 28 points, he went off there. And so they're 7th in the Big Ten at 12-5 right now. By the time you hear this game will be over. But Tuesday, they are at Columbus to play against Minnesota on Big Ten Network. So that one is over already. So whatever the result is, hopefully Ohio State wins. Friday, they're at Ann Arbor, number 3 team up north, 8 p.m. on Fox. And then next Monday, January 26th, they will be at home against Penn State, 7 p.m. on Fox Sports 1 there. So that's Ohio State's next come against as they go deep now into Big Ten Conference basketball. This is the conference part of the season of basketball, and this is my favorite time of the year for college basketball. It's over March. Not over March. I should rephrase that, because when you get to the conference tournaments, that's where it gets the real deal. Okay, um, it's just more competitive basketball is what I like about it. Okay, everybody's more competitive in their own conference. Even if your team is bad, they could have a good game against a good team in the conference. So that's what I like about it, is because anybody can win at any given moment and shake things up. And, so yeah, I would say the March Madness is the best time of the year for college basketball and one of the best times for basketball, period. But there's something about, I think when the weather is cold and football is wrapping up, you have, this is some of the best sports to watch right here. That's what I'm trying to get at there. So for Akron coming up last week, they went 2-0. They beat Ball State at home 87-77. And then Saturday they beat Western Michigan at home 104-89. That is 26 straight home game wins. The record is 30 by Keith Dambrot, so they're closing in on that. Tuesday, you already know the result by the time you hear this, but they're at Buffalo 6:30 p.m. on ESPN+. Friday, they are at Athens, Ohio to play Ohio U, 8 p.m. on ESPNU. And that's it until our next 10-cent beer night. So we'll talk about the rest on our next 10-cent beer night here. But I'm very much looking forward to what Akron's doing. I mean, a lot of people are praising Akron, 14-4, second in the MAC right now. Just playing some great basketball. A lot of the mid-American majors, mid-majors are watching them. This is the Zeps team that doesn't give me headaches. So that's one of the reasons why I like. I mean, it's the sport at Akron you could definitely rely on to get some happiness and consistency out of. So John Gross has done an incredible job there. So watch out for those games. And again, they're away. So I think realistically with Ohio State, Ohio State could go 2-1. They might lose to Team Up North. I hate to say that, but look, they're at Ann Arbor, and Team Up North's the top 3 team right now. Yeah, it might. But you know what? I'll pull for the Buckeye. I will. But I'm just giving predictions. I could see Sips going 2-0 this week. If they do lose one, I think it might be that one in Athens. Yeah, that trip there. Make John Gross's old program. But we'll see about that. And then, of course, tonight, you'll know the result by the time you hear this, but I don't. You have Miami Hurricanes and Indiana Hoosiers for the college football championship. So college football ends tonight. Indiana 15-0. Will they go perfect? I think they will. I want Miami to win. Yeah, only because I don't want another Big Ten team to win. I have no problem with Miami win. I mean, here's the good news for Ohio State. The 2 teams they lost to happen to be the 2 in the championship. Okay, so I mean they lost to the best. Let's just take it as it is. It is impressive. Miami being a 10th seed in this championship game here. But I don't want another Big Ten team winning that's not Ohio State, because then we'll have to hear about it for the next year. Yes, it was worse when it was a team up north, but just to have it be and Indiana's done very, very well. Don't get me wrong. I wish both teams luck. It's not going to be the end of the world whoever wins, but I'm okay with Miami winning this one. That's what I'll say there. We'll go with football transfer portal, by the way, because that's heating up pretty well. You have for the Ohio State Buckeyes, the departures here that I'm listing. There's a lot of them. Oh my gosh, and there's more. Yeah. What's up? Bryson Rogers, wide receiver, going to the University of South Florida there, joining Brian Hartline there. Tight end Jelani Thurman is going to North Carolina to join Bill Belichick. Quarterback Mason Maggs is transferring undecided. Running back Sam Dixon is going to South Carolina. These are Ohio State players moving on from Ohio State, if you didn't hear what I said. Lincoln Keyholtz is leaving Ohio State for Louisville. Cornerback Bryce West is leaving for Wisconsin, so he'll play the Ohio State Buckeyes later the year. During next season, I should say. Defensive end C.J. Hicks is going to the University of South Florida with Hartline there. Defensive end Dominic Kirk's undecided. Defensive end Logan George is going to Washington, so he'll play Ohio State in the Big Ten there. Long snapper Grant Mills is going to UMass. He's going to the MAC there. Running back James Peoples. I didn't know he was leaving. That sucks. I liked him. He's going to Penn State to join Matt Campbell there. His development's going to thrive over there with Campbell. Burkari Miles Jr. is leaving Ohio State undecided right now. Wide receiver Demarion Whitton is leaving Ohio State for Maryland, so he will also play Ohio State eventually during the season, during his time in Maryland. Wide receiver Dorian Williams is undecided there. Ohio State's loaded with wide receivers, so a lot of these guys want to get playing time elsewhere. Nick McClarty, punter, is going to Arizona State. Transferring, I should say. Offensive lineman Isaiah Kima is going to Utah. Cornerback Aaron Scott Jr. is going to Oregon, so he'll eventually play Ohio State again. Offensive lineman Tegra Tshubala is going to Kentucky. Wide receiver Mylan Graham is going to Notre Dame. Devontae Armstrong, offensive tackle, undecided, but he will be in the portal leaving Ohio State. Justin Terry, offensive tackle, is going to Virginia Tech and leaving Ohio State there. Wide receiver Quincy Porter is transferring to Notre Dame. Offensive lineman Draven McFadden is transferring to Colorado. Defensive lineman Maxwell Roy is staying in the Big Ten and transferring to UCLA. Safety Keenan Nelson Jr. is leaving Ohio State and undecided right now. Defensive lineman Jarquiz Carter, defensive lineman. He's going to Miami, so he might be leaving the former championship to the new champion. We'll find out soon. Safety Malik Hartford is staying in the Big Ten and being transferred to UCLA. Wide receiver Bodkin Miller is leaving Ohio State undecided. Defensive lineman Eric Mensah is transferred to Virginia Tech. Linebacker Ty Howard, undecided. Safety Fahim Delane, transferred to LSU. Defensive end Joshua Mickens, Ohio State, undecided. Trahan Odom, defensive lineman, transferring to Arkansas. And safety Cody Haddad, undecided. That's the most Buckeyes I've ever seen leave in a time span. Transferring to Ohio State, the following. Defensive lineman John Walker, going from UCF to Ohio State. Linebacker Christian Allegro, transferring from Wisconsin to Ohio State. Quarterback Justin Martin, transferring from Maryland to Ohio State. Tight end Mason Williams, transferring from Ohio U to Ohio State. Doesn't have a far drive at all. Wide receiver Devin McCoon is transferring from UTCA to Ohio State. That's it. That's a smaller school. That's interesting there. Safety Terry Moore is transferring from Duke to Ohio State. Wide receiver Kyle Parker is following his old wide receiver coach from LSU and going to Ohio State. Long snapper Delton Riggs is transferring from UCF to Ohio State. Running back Jacoby Jackson is transferring from Florida to Ohio State. Cornerback Cam Calhoun is transferring from Alabama to Ohio State. Defensive end Qua Rashaw, transferring from Alabama to Ohio State. Defensive line James Smith, transferring from Alabama to Ohio State. Earl Little Jr., his dad played for the Browns. Safety, transferring from Florida State to Ohio State. Tight end Hunter McCling, transferring from Northwestern Ohio State, so he'll stay in the Big Ten. Connor Hawkins, kicker. They're going to upgrade the kicker here, transferring from Baylor to Ohio State. And cornerback Dominic Kelly from Georgia, transferring to Ohio State there. So going to now the Akron Zips transfer portal there. We had mentioned last week with Bob who are transferring out, so I'm not going to read those. Nobody really knew transferring out. I did see a linebacker, Marcus Boswell, is going to Texas. That is crazy. Going from Akron to Texas. But new Akron Zips from the transfer portal. Offensive lineman Melvin Puckett is coming from, I don't even recognize this school, Bethune-Cookman to Akron U. Dwayne Galloway Jr., cornerback transferring from West Virginia to Akron. Punter Aiden Steyer, transferring from West Virginia to Akron. Wide receiver Miles Burris, transferring from Charlotte to Akron. Offensive tackle Carlos Slayden, transferring from Southern Miss to Akron. You have offensive lineman Brandon Smith, transferring from South Dakota to Akron. Tight end Wyatt Hook, transferring from Michigan State to Akron. Wide receiver Titus Myers transferred from Old Dominion to Akron. Quarterback Reese Poffenberger transferred from North Texas to Akron. Poffenberger was at Miami U last year. Okay, not this past season, 2024. He was Cam Ward's backup quarterback. Okay, so and he played in the college football final last year. So that's he'll probably be the starting quarterback. That's a big addition there. And Dwight Nanu from FIU Golden Panthers will be transferring to Akron there. He's a linebacker, so there you go. We're out of time as far as baseball news goes. Kyle Tucker, top free agent, goes to the Los Angeles Dodgers, turns down better deals from the Mets and the Blue Jays. And then Bo Bichette is going to go play third base for the Mets as he signs a deal with them there. So we'll talk more about baseball when Bob comes back next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. When we come back next week, we'll talk about the Cavaliers, the All-Star festivities there, because that's creeping up. We'll talk about the baseball hot stove. We'll talk about the end of college football, see if Akron and Ohio State make any more moves in the college game there. We'll talk about basketball, college basketball. When I meant moves, I meant college football, and because it's getting to the college off season technically now. We'll talk about the Browns. Maybe they have a new head coach by the time we talk again. We don't know. We'll talk about that and more. But until then, and then we'll talk about the Super Bowl matchup. You guys be good to each other. Stay safe out there. Stay warm. It is getting up pretty cold and icy out there. And without further ado, go Cavs. Follow the Fifth Dimension Facebook page and the 10 Cent Beer Night page for updates on sports, especially the high school football broadcast schedule there. And remember, Field and Mogador next week, January 27th. Go Cavs. You guys have a good one.